Welcome to another edition of Mining Now. I'm your host, Roy Slack, and we're live from Las Vegas and Mine Expo. And today we're talking about REDWAVE Solutions, and we're talking with Tanner Williams, who's a sales engineer with the group. And welcome, Tanner.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and having this conversation.
Yeah, no, we talked a little bit before, but tell us about the show, the big show.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Las Vegas is an amazing place to be. If you haven't been or somebody hasn't been to a show of this magnitude, it is absolutely unbelievable. 40 plus thousand, I think, attendees is what I heard last. 3 halls, just unbelievable amount of companies and things that are going on in the industry. So really, really amazing to see. And then obviously Vegas is just a great place to be, get awesome food and really good experience too.
Yeah. You know, I wasn't sure about the 40,000 until I got here Tuesday morning and lined up for registration.
Exactly.
It's wild.
Yeah.
It's a wild show.
Yep.
And before we get into REDWAVE, I want to find out a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, how'd you get involved in this industry? What's your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really is kind of a crazy story of how I got to this point, but I actually started my career and went to school to become a mechanic and started as a heavy equipment mechanic. And there I worked on for some industrial companies, working on industrial equipment and heavy equipment. And then actually had an opportunity to join a larger mining company on the eastern seaboard, and spent a couple years doing that and learning mining applications. I actually worked in the aggregate industry at that point, so learning crushers and screens and those things. And then from there had opportunity to work my way into kind of operations side of mining, and obviously there was an amazing amount of things that I learned. And then decided, throughout a couple years of doing that joining a company such as REDWAVE and then being in the sales aspect, because I love spending time with people, is what brought me here.
You know, I appreciate that, because I think you have empathy with clients. You know?
Absolutely.
You've had to maintain equipment.
Yep.
You've seen what happens when things are down.
Yep.
And it's not just fixing it. When one thing is down, often everything is down.
Absolutely.
Expensive in the mining industry. So
very expensive, yes.
Yeah. So that's you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about REDWAVE Solutions. And I've learned a little bit about it. We're going to talk about sorting, but tell us about the company.
Yeah, so REDWAVE is actually an Austrian-based company, so we're headquartered in Austria. We have 2 main subsidiaries, one in Germany, and then obviously the one here in the United States, just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So we are our subsidiary is called REDWAVE Solutions US, and we focus on obviously North America and certain parts of South America there. But yeah, we as a company focus on building sensor-based sorting machines, so an equipment manufacturer in that capacity, and that is our bread and butter. We've been doing that a little over 25 years now. Secondary to that, we also do quite a bit in plant building. So, we want to provide that opportunity to a potential customer, that not only the sorting machine that they may need for their application, but we can actually build the infrastructure that goes along with it.
So I want to talk about sorting, and I'm very interested in it. It provides, there's some real win-wins in the mining industry. We'll get into that in a minute, but but you're involved in different aggregate, for example, in different things.
Yeah.
So tell us about before we get into some of the equipment. Tell us about sorting in general.
Yeah, so I mean, as a high level overview, the purpose of sorting is really to in one case upgrade material and doing a good job there, but also reducing waste, reducing tailings. But we actually operate in several different areas. So for example, we have a division that does metals recycling. We have a division that does glass recycling, paper and plastics, textiles, as well as our mining applications. And so it's a little different between all of those. Obviously, those other industries are more recycling focused versus what we are here in mining. But in all of those cases, it really is about finding and grabbing a hold of valuable material, or reducing the amount that you may lose as far as traditional processing goes.
Yeah. And of course, we're talking about mining today.
Yeah.
And I've seen operations that were, I would say, borderline in terms of grade, but applying sorting technology actually turned them into mines, made them,
Capable.
took enough waste out,
Yep.
brought the grade up. But there's some win-wins here. There's some different things that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, from my perspective, working with several different customers, the thing that I really love about the mining industry as a whole, and why I think it's important, and so many people don't understand this at a high level, the saying I've heard that I really love is, if it's not grown, it's probably mined, right? And I actually looked at, I was curious, I looked at a men's daily vitamin that I take, and saw the list of ingredients on there that comes
Zinc
from the
and
mining.
iron
It's
and stuff
zinc,
like that?
iron, manganese, magnesium, potassium, all of these things. And so all of that comes from mining, and it has to be done. And mining is one of the oldest industries in the world, and really, seeing the history of it long term, seeing, that it's always been valuable, but now realizing that, a lot of these things are finite. They don't necessarily last forever.
Yeah.
And the key word, in my opinion, is sustainability, like finding a way to make sure that my kids and grandkids can also benefit from the industry.
So you mentioned sustainability, which is good, because I was about to ask about that. And one of the things that many of us recognized early is when you can sort material, you can reduce tailings.
Absolutely.
And that's a big focus in our industry now.
Yep.
Maybe you can touch on that.
Yeah, in the mining industry specifically, in the sector that we work in, that I would say is probably the top focus.
Okay.
So there's some focus on in certain applications where we can upgrade material, right? Which, again, as a business case, that may be valuable. But really, at the end of the day, when you look into tailings and waste and what happens that, and the amount of money that has to go into that in hauling it and getting rid of it or stockpiling it or whatever, all of these things, it really turns out to be quite a large amount of money that gets invested in that. And then, obviously, when we're talking about waste tailings, that's not something that's bringing in dollars to a bottom line. So we want to find the best way to do that.
We always look for win-wins. So on the one hand, with sorting, you're not putting as much tailings out there, but you're also not processing that waste, which costs money, and through your plant, you're not handling it like you do tailings. There's a lot of downstream things that happen that can save you operating costs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would think, in my opinion, anytime I speak with a new potential customer, I have what I call a 4-part plan to potentially helping them build a business case. We've already spoke a little bit about them. The first 2 would be exactly what we're speaking right now. It would be the reduction of tailings, and then secondary to that, potentially reduction of processing costs, right? So a finalized processing, whatever it may be, leaching or flotation or grinding, milling, any of these situations. Obviously, if you can reduce the amount of waste material that's going into that processing, that reduces the cost. So those 2, in my opinion, would be in the category of more immediate return on investment, short term coming back into the bottom line. The third aspect that I really look at is the long term aspect as well. So, over a mine life, you're working with a mine planner, and they're saying this mine is going to be producing for 50 plus years. And so what does that look like if we, obviously, however much amount of material we reduce from the tailings, from the waste and processing, that is now more usable material long term. So the long term aspect would be, instead of a 50-year mine plan, maybe we gain 5 years, maybe we gain 10 years of active production. The fourth, and I would say this one is what I would call the possible, it's not always applicable, but I've seen it in certain situations, is that we actually now, in certain situations, have been able to upgrade those tailings or waste to a point where it actually now becomes a sellable material.
Okay.
So you actually may be able to, instead of having to stockpile it or whatever you do with it, actually may be a new marketable material for you.
Yeah. The other thing I noted here, as a mining engineer, when we do mine planning, we look at tonnage per day, and sometimes that's dictated by the mine, but sometimes it's dictated by the processing plant.
Absolutely.
So if you can reduce the waste through the processing plant, you can increase your tons per day.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I think, what I've seen a lot of really crazy mine applications. I was actually talking to a guy last night at dinner that works in, the copper mine industry. And, I used to think as an operations director that a quarry that I used to be involved with, our goal was running about 1 million tons a year of usable product. And he looked at me and said, yeah, that's kind of our goal for each day. Which is unbelievable. So, I think opportunity is there, and like you said, a lot of times in my experience, it does get bottlenecked,
Yeah.
if you will, on the back end processing end.
Yeah. So I think the industry is beginning to recognize some of the benefits of sorting, and I've seen a few applications. But let's talk about rocks. So you got the big
yeah.
Poster right behind us. But rocks is one of your products. And can you give us a little bit of information on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So each one of our industries that we operate in, as I was mentioning earlier, has a different machine type or chassis that we have designed to be the most efficient in that specifically. So for our mining and also our C&D or construction demolition waste applications, the ROX machine is our go-to. Basically, the chassis that you see behind me on the poster here will be pretty much the same in all of our applications for the mining. Really what happens is the individual technology that we put inside of it is what may change depending on the application, and really what we have found through testing to work best for that individual thing.
Yeah. So I'm a client.
Yeah.
And you've told me how great sorting is.
Absolutely.
And I said, I really want to see how rocks would fit into our operations. So, so what comes next? I'm sure you're looking for some specs and some different.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, kind of a process there. We start having conversations, and what I want to do as a sales engineer, and what I want to do in building relationships with people, is to be as transparent and as open as possible, and also as efficient as possible, right? So we normally start by let's work on building a business case. The first application of that is going to be, can we do anything successfully with your specific material? And so it's really not a one-size-fits-all answer, because I'm sure, as being in an engineering background, you can have a limestone mine in the southeastern part of the United States versus a limestone mine in the southwestern part of the United States, and they're going to be different. They're both limestone, but they'll be different. And so we start there. Let's get some material identification, do some of that testing. We actually will more than likely bring it to our testing facility.
So you'll take a sample of whatever sizing crushed material you expect to go into that.
Yep.
Take it to your facilities and do some testing.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to take it, and we'll start with a simple identification test. So the first test, we don't need a lot of material. We basically get enough to say this is identified as your specific material, and basically separate it into what is going to be your good material versus what is necessarily going to be bad, or what we want to get rid of or separate, if you will. And so we start there, and we start with the learning test. And the reason we do that, very simply, is we want to know immediately. We get this done in the first couple weeks of a process. Like I said, can I do anything with your material? Because in certain situations, the answer may be no. The technology that we use has to work and actually be able to do something with that. So that's kind of step one, is identification. Once we complete that step, the next step would be, okay, let's get a little more in depth. We may do at that point a large scale test, which is where we would then look and see running your specific material through the specific technology package that we use. What does the purity look like? What does the efficiency look like? And then what is throughput and these other things. And then once we've kind of created that package and have come to an agreement with the customer that they're happy with the purity and efficiency rate, now how does that get implemented into existing plant, or do we need to build something new to be able to use that?
Yeah. I'm trying to picture the things like throughput and what type of sizing comes into the sorter. I mean, there's some crushing that goes on beforehand.
Right. So again, to be as open as possible and as available as possible, our size range actually runs from 3 to 300 millimeters.
Okay.
So a little less than a quarter of an inch, upwards of 12 inches.
Okay, so
the only stipulation for our technology efficiency that we've seen is around a 1 to 3 size ratio in the same run. So obviously it creates problems if we have a 1/4 inch piece and a 12 inch piece at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we have a really large range there to try to be able to access as many applications.
And what about throughput? If you've got a machine in, rather than machines in parallel, if you've got a machine running, what type of tonnage? I guess it all depends.
Yeah, I mean,
the
number one question will be the specific density and obviously size fraction that we would be running in. The size fraction most of the time with our customer will be based on the liberation of material, right? So at whichever the largest size possible that your material is successfully liberated, that we could actually make a successful sort. So that's kind of how that looks. But we have experience. I actually have a customer in Finland that has multiple machines from us, and they're operating in the probably 6 to 12 inch size fraction range on one of the machines, and that machine is throughputting right around 240 tons per hour.
Oh, really?
So that 200-ish is probably our maximum per individual machine.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, once you go to smaller material, those tonnages can start to lower a little bit.
So is it typically conveyor feed, or is it chute feed, or?
Yeah, so the feeding to the REDWAVE machine is based on what makes the most sense for the area that it's built in. All of our machines, once they get built, if they can see it behind me, has a vibratory feeder attached to the machine. So as soon as we get the material to that vibratory feeder, it does a very good job of evenly spreading the material out and bringing it into our machine the way that we want it to. The reason for that is the machine actually works in a free fall situation. So there's actually no moving parts inside of our machine, which is really good for maintenance and those type of things. So we make sure to feed it to the machine correctly. It free falls through the machine. We make an identification and then a decision to eject, and then we use compressed air to eject said material onto a different belt.
Yeah. So there's, when I think about it, you're designing a new mine. That much of a problem. If you've got the machine, the specs, you can design it in. You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
But when you're in a brownfield situation, and I come to you and say, "Here's our processing plant.
Yep.
We want to include sorting in it."
Yep.
There's got to be some challenges there, I imagine.
Absolutely, and that's where I think part of what sets REDWAVE apart in our, I guess, group of industry, people that focus on sorting. We found it very important to focus on the plant building side or the plant building capability as well for that exact reason. I would say probably half of our people at the headquarters in Austria are engineering R&D department, and it's because of that. So each application will be different. How do we not only even get the machine to be implemented in a size restriction, but also in the most efficient and effective way possible? So we can go from simply a single machine to I have a customer I'm working with right now where we'll actually build them a sorting line right outside of their pit.
Okay.
So they'll do sorting directly out of the pit.
Yeah.
And we'll build the infrastructure for that, and then that way the only material that's being then hauled to their processing facility will be the good material, which obviously is going to help them reduce the cost there.
Yeah. So that leads me to a question about your services, because I know there's a product that you sell.
Yeah.
But you've already talked about that front end engineering.
Yep.
So what is what's the complete value chain that REDWAVE provides to clients?
Yeah. So again, from the initial conversations through design engineering, as far as implementing a sorting machine, as far as that goes, and then on the back end, we want to provide a full-fledged service on our REDWAVE machines. So, particularly in the U.S., we work with some partners that would help us take care of things that are not the REDWAVE machine, and then we actually have our own service division and parts division in the U.S. that we keep a large amount of parts on stockpile available for use, and then we have our specified technicians to work on the machines. One thing I think that is really cool about that, especially as being a former mechanic, and I know what it's like to travel all over the United States to go to these locations. We've actually recently implemented a system on our machines that will allow us to potentially remote in via Wi-Fi signal.
Okay.
And so that way, if there's a computer programming issue, so it's not something mechanical on the machine, it's a computer program technology issue, there's many situations where we can actually remote in and potentially fix that without having to travel to site, which again streamlines and saves money. So
you can you don't have to call them and say turn it off and turn it on again.
I think honestly, I really get a kick out of that because even though I have a service background, I'm not fully trained in the service aspect. So if they were to call me, that's my first answer is turn it on, turn it off again. And then if that doesn't work, let's take a look at it and see what's going on.
So you touched on it briefly there, but I'm interested in how it actually works, because you talked about compressed air. There's some visual recognition. So how does it work in general?
Yeah, so in our ROX machine, there's 3 major technologies that we normally would look at potentially integrating into the machine. The first one that will be in all of the ROX machines is a color camera identification. So we start with color camera. The reason we do that is there are several applications that simply a color difference in material is enough to make a decision and actually sort.
Maybe the easiest.
That's definitely the easiest, and obviously could be the cheapest as well. So single side color detection as well as double side color detection. So in the machine, on the top side of the machine, we'll always have a color camera, because we also use the input of the size and shape of the individual material pieces as well. If we so that's where we start, and then if we get to a point where the color separation is not enough to do what is needed, an example may be in a calcite operation. If you have white calcite and also white dolomite, but let's say you maybe want to remove that dolomite, the color there is not enough because they're both white. So then we go to our what we call near infrared technology. Basically, we can implement that in the machine as well, in conjunction with the color. And what we do there is actually read the individual minerals based on the infrared spectrum. So it's I want to say it's 800 to about 2,500 nanometers on that spectrum that we're reading, and we look for the peaks, the differences that are there. So we then can identify this mineral as calcite, this mineral as dolomite, and make a decision based on that. The third one that is potentially becoming more common, we use it mostly in our metals recycling industry, is actually XRF, which is X-ray fluorescence. We are looking at applications to add those into the mining aspect, and that would be for your base metals and those type of things. And so that would be also potentially a third technology that we could implement into the ROX machine.
Okay, so that's the recognition part. So now the machine has identified this piece is good, this piece is bad. Then there's the next part is the physical part.
Exactly. So very basically, we've actually created our own software. The people that are a lot smarter than I am have created this. So again, as it's working in free fall, we use that technology to make the identification. And then part of that is we've done the calculation to know exactly in free fall where that piece of material is. And then there's basically our ejection unit is a line of air jets that once it identifies and says we need to eject this piece, it will fire off one or multiple, depending on the size of the piece, of those air jets for half of a second, maybe not even that long, to blow a stream of air at that piece and push it forward enough to go on our ejection plate, basically.
So during the phase where there's that visual recognition, there's also got to be some spatial recognition.
Absolutely.
In order to
Yeah.
locate where that piece is.
Yeah, it's reading it from the time it comes off the chute all the way to, where identification here, and you
Yeah.
have this time frame. And obviously, like I said, people much smarter than I am know the math around
Yeah.
what that is. And then inevitably it will end up at this certain point at a very specific time. And we can eject it.
Yeah.
So all of this is happening in milliseconds,
Yeah.
which is really unbelievable.
And I imagine it's just there's probably no special compressed air requirements.
Yeah, I mean, we have basic,
Standard.
we have very basic compressed air requirements. Most of our customers, a standard 150 gallon or 150 liter air tank, and certain, I want to say like around an 8 bar available air pressure to the machine. And then, yeah, I mean, it's individually fired air jets, so it's not a constant airflow. It's just an operating pressure.
Yeah. So you're based in the States.
Correct.
And I'm assuming that's your focus, but this is a global company.
Absolutely.
And so markets worldwide.
Absolutely. So it's again headquartered in Austria. So a colleague of mine who's actually at the show here with me, named Manfred, is takes care of throughout Europe and into other parts of the world. My focus is North America and parts of South America. So I'm working in the U.S., Mexico, Canada. I have customers in all of those areas that I'm working with currently. But yeah, I mean, mining is a worldwide application. We want to be a worldwide application. REDWAVE as a company has over 1,000 sorting machines placed worldwide. I mean, just about anywhere you could drop a pin, we'll have one relatively close. And so, yeah, we look to service wherever we can.
Yeah. So I'm going to backtrack here and emphasize a couple of things because personally, I'm a big fan of sorting.
Okay.
Because I think it's a win-win-win.
Awesome.
So it's a win in terms of either increasing your grade or increasing your throughput to the mill, but it also decreases your tailings.
Yep.
Decreases the amount of waste material you process.
Absolutely.
There's so many things that happen along the way that have to play into the return on investment of this equipment.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier, but the main word that I focus on that I like to use is sustainability, and that is what we have seen and what we focus on as a company, especially with our roots in all of those other industries. As I mentioned, all of those have recycling attached to them, and so we bring that mindset into mining, for the right reasons. Like we want to do it for the right reasons, circular economy and being efficient and effective with what we're doing. But we also have found all of those applications or instances that you just mentioned help a customer's bottom line.
Yeah.
All of those return dollars back into the budget.
Yeah. So are there any, I won't call them case studies, are there any recent applications that would be of interest? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. So we very basically have, or the ones I wanted to talk about, we have one that's called Cretan magnesite. And so we are doing basic color sorting there to separate out the magnesite versus the intergrown particles that are in their mine. That basically is giving them a very consistent and high grade stream of magnesite into their kiln process, which is what that then gets used for. We also have a customer. The plant that we build is actually listed here on our banner. It's Eurotalc in Slovakia. What we implemented there was they are doing flotation as a final process. And what we saw was they actually have an underground mine where the talc is coming from. And so, not like in an open pit mine where you, with blasting and with loading and with, trained operators, you can kind of work around certain seams of material, by doing that. Obviously, it's difficult to do that in an underground mine. It's based on how to safely do it, not as much working around that. So what that created for them was a very inconsistent in-feed material into their flotation. They were getting all of the tailings, all of the secondary material. So we built the full plant for them. Basically, we sort with our full-size machine and our fines machine, which is how we get down to that 3 millimeter size. We sort, and then what that gives them is a consistent graded in-feed into their flotation, which reduces their processing costs, but also gives them a better final product.
That wouldn't be color. I'm picturing talc is pretty consistent, so that wouldn't be color sorting.
We have there's color implemented in it again, but that one we do also implement our near infrared technology. Yes, and then another application is here in the U.S. in Montana. Barrett's Minerals, who also operates in the talc sector, similar situation. They actually pull material from multiple different pit locations, and so again, it was a consistency basis on, you know, if it came from this mine versus this mine, but we want to have the same consistency going into our finalized processing, and sorting has allowed them all to do that.
Okay, very good. So lots going on. What's the future hold for REDWAVE Solutions? Exciting times.
It absolutely is. And really, I love being at this show because that's what everybody here is talking about, is the future and how we do this at a high level moving forward. So for us at REDWAVE, it really is about continuing to innovate, continuing to find ways to successfully do what we're trying to do. That may be implementation of new technologies. That may be finding new ways to use our existing technology. And what I love the most about this company is that we work, you know, even past the sales cycle, we work directly with our customers. We want that feedback. We want to be involved in the optimization of these machines to really know how to best get the production out of them. So continuing to do that, continuing to innovate and find ways to, you know, work with a changing environment and a changing economy. Absolutely.
I can picture that, you know, if I come to you as a client with, here's my situation.
Yep.
You know, that's an engine for innovation there. You look at each different situation and have to figure out what to do.
Absolutely.
You may be trying some new things, some different things.
Absolutely.
So it's constantly evolving.
I tell any customer, potential customer, especially, I've had this conversation with people here at the show already this week, is, you know, they have a very specific application or something they're trying to accomplish. If I can look at them and say, yes, I have a proven example that I could show you, that's an easy conversation.
Yeah.
It's what I really enjoy is when I look at you and say, actually, I haven't done that yet, but I'm willing to try. And we're willing to put in the work and test that and see, can we do it? And if the answer is no, you know, it is what it is. But obviously we want to get creative and try to make it possible.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here, because I'm a fan of sorting, so I was looking forward to this this show. But any final thoughts? I mean, you've given us some things already, but what do you want to leave with the audience? Yeah,
I mean, for me, I love this industry. I love what this industry stands for, and I love what shows like this stand for. So my final thoughts would be that, you know, we continue to get together and collaborate in these ways and these conversations and all of the conversations that have happened at this show already, and continue to work together and find what is going to work for the long-term future. You know, I know buzzwords around this show has been, you know, with the EV, you know, electric battery and critical minerals and all of these things. And so, you know, with an industry that is as involved in day-to-day human life as what mining is, you have to continue to be innovating and making these things happen, and that's what I want to do. So I'm willing to talk and spend time with anybody that is ready to do that. So excellent. Yeah. Well, thanks, Tanner. I enjoyed this discussion. Thank you for having me. And to our audience, we've been talking with Tanner Williams from REDWAVE Solutions about sorting and about their products. And if you want to get in touch with Tanner, you can do so through his LinkedIn contact information. And we've been talking to you live from the conference, the trade show floor at Mine Expo in Las Vegas. And thank you for joining us on another edition of Mining Now.